I'm going to show you guys how I created Sydney Sweeney's dark suede blonde. We really just customized it to her, and we're making this a little bit of a lighter version than what I've done in the past, and it's super customizable and buildable, and we just added a couple extra highlights on her. My name is Jacob Schwartz. I'm here today with Schwarzkopf. Come along with me. I'm so excited about this.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so we're changing her hair. What do you want to do?
Yes, okay, so I'm thinking we do something like Sydney's dark suede blonde that she had, but I want to be a little bit brighter for spring.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Okay, that's actually so funny because I just made her lighter for Vanity Fair, so we'll do like the lighter, brighter iteration of dark suede blonde. So Lee, it looks like you've been getting a lot of highlights, right, over time.
Yes.
So, which is so fun, but I'm thinking it might be better maintenance-wise. What's your schedule with, like, how often you're getting your hair done?
Yeah, so I feel like I've been changing up how I do my hair a lot lately. Typically, I've been getting my hair done about every 12 weeks, approximately, but I also do know when I'm like a little bit brighter, it's been leading to a little bit more breakage, like with the super blonde. So I don't know, I want it to still be healthy and still be able to get that length too, because I feel like that's been sacrificed in the process.
Great, yeah, and I think this technique is really going to help with grow out and the health of your hair and adding more dimension, so it's going to be great. I'm so excited. So Lee is probably like in between a 6 and a 5, and what I'm gonna do is low light her and highlight her. So you guys can see this line of demarcation. What I'm gonna do is low light and highlight. I'm gonna use Vibrance for the low lights and break up this line of demarcation. I'm gonna use a darker color here and then a lighter color here. And then when I highlight, that's basically gonna get rid of any line of demarcation here. And at the end, it will be completely seamless. With Sydney's hair, she was starting off a little blonder, so I was able to just get away with using 6.0 and 7.0 on the top portion, and then 8.0 and 9.55 on the ends. Now, 6.0 and 7.0, even though they are neutral, they still lean a little warm, so on someone that doesn't have a ton of blonde in their hair, or it's a warmer blonde, you can actually put in a little -1. So I'm gonna use 7-1 and 6-0 on the top of Lee, but on the ends, I'm still gonna keep it the same because the 9.55 is just security for me, knowing that it's not gonna go green on the bottom. When I'm doing lowlights, I love to label my bowls. I'll use the top bowl for the darker color and then the bottom bowl for the bottom color. So basically, if you're looking at the hair from the side, this is the top, this is the bottom, and nothing gets confused. Also, I like to use 2 different brushes. So I'll use a darker brush for the top bowl, and then I'll use a lighter brush or a different color for the bottom bowl. So that's my tip. I just get so happy when I see these pink boxes on my station. I'm gonna start with the top portion of the low light. So I'm gonna use 6.0, 7.1 Vibrance. You have to use a scale, you guys. This is the only way to get accurate measurements. Okay, so I'm gonna do 30 cc's of the 6.0. 30 cc's are 30 grams. And then I'm gonna use 30 cc's or grams of 7.1. That's the ash color. And I'm using this on her because she has a little bit more warmth than Sydney did. So -0 is neutral, and in my experience, it tends to lean a little warmer. Now that I've mixed up the top portion, I'm gonna mix up the bottom portion, and I'm using 9.55 and 8.0 on the ends. I love 9.55 because it's gold, but it's not too gold, it's just enough to make sure that the ends don't turn green. So this is the bottom part, and this is also going to be equal parts. I'm going to do 30 and 30. With Vibrance, the color payoff is amazing. It's even consistent results through the ends because they are porous, so sometimes you'll get those like spots or like lines where I've used other Demi-Permanent colors before and I've had an issue where I have to go over the same piece of hair twice for it to actually grab. And then sometimes it turns green or, you know, red. So for a brunette or a blonde, that's kind of a nightmare. Okay, so now that we've got these squeezed out, so we say this in the salon, squeezed out, this just means we have them ready to go. Then we'll add developer. I love the 6-volume gel developer. This is like my favorite thing ever. I'll use this with the Lowlights or with color all over. So I did 30 and 30 of the Vibrance, so I'm gonna do 60 of the 6-volume. I just love the consistency of it. Like, it's just so nice. Like, when you're using it on the hair, it evenly coats the hair. It's like, it's so easy to use. I think that's for me, it's really about efficiency. Like, when I'm in the salon, I wanna make sure my days go smooth. I want things to work. And it's, you know, I've used other lines where I'm dripping color everywhere and there's just, it's a mess. So that's why I love Vibrance. It feels so healthy and strong and shiny. And I'm gonna be using IGORA VIBRANCE Super Blonde Plus. And the reason why I love this lightener is, one, it's beautiful. Like, look how fine and perfect it is. When you mix it up for highlights, it's never chunky, it's never messy. It's my favorite. I just love Schwarzkopf VIBRANCE Blonde Super Plus lightener because it lifts to that perfect gold. Okay, so I personally love golden natural highlights on my brunettes and blondes, so that's why I love this bleach, because it just lifts to the perfect color and I really can control the lift, where I've used other lighteners where within 2 seconds the hair is completely blasted and super light, and I just have trust in ensures that I never will overshoot or over lighten, and the hair always feels healthy and the integrity is there, and that's very important to me and my clients. I never usually use anything higher than 20 volume because I don't want to damage my client's hair. And you guys shouldn't either. Okay, so I'm mixing. It's a white powder. And they also have a blue-based lightener for you guys that like more ashy or pale tones. Yeah, so I love the white powder because I can see in the foil what it's lifted to. I know some people don't like that. That's just my personal preference. But the great thing about Schwarzkopf is there's always so many options. You know, I don't like it runny. I like it more kind of like a yogurt, I think, to have control with what I'm doing. So in the foil, if I'm like selecting certain pieces, which you guys will see me do in a little bit, if the lightener is too loose, it spreads too much in the foil. I like to have a little bit more precision, so I'll use maybe a little bit less developer, just that way it's a little thicker. I like to start in the back because when you're rinsing, you know, highlights process as you go. So that's gonna be the first spot that's gonna develop. So I would rather rinse the back of her head than rinse the front. So right now I'm using the VIBRANCE Super Blonde Plus white powder with 20 volume. And this is for the highlights. I'm doing it a little tighter around the hairline just because I want her to have lightness when she wears her hair up. But then you'll see as I go through the head, I'll take a little bit more space between the lowlights. I'm leaving the ends out because they're already lightened. I prefer diagonals because it doesn't look as streaky around the nape of the neck. She had 20% or more gray. Lee would be getting a base color first. Now, if she doesn't have a ton of gray, I could use the Vibrance and that would cover and blend a little bit after. I think for this look, actually, I think I'd want it to look a little bit more twinkly. So I feel like I'd probably use the Zero Ammonia on her. And I would pair depending on how much gray she has, I would pair it with a -1 to make sure it doesn't go red. So if she had more gray in the front, maybe I'd use a different formula and use 15 volume or 20 volume, and then keep the 10 volume on the roots so they don't go too hot or warm. I just love that Schwarzkopf has so many options because you can really customize it to the client. And I also think that's like the most important thing when you're working with people and you're in the service industry and you're creating things. It's just, you really want everyone to feel special, and having those tools to do that is so important. Yeah, like right now I'm kind of doing, like I did that kind of like perimeter of her neck with highlights, and then the inside I'm creating a little bit more depth with just using the Vibrance Lowlights. But you can see the ends are still light, so she'll still have some lightness. Here you can see the marbling, there's like red, and then there's light. So I'm just gonna swipe this and low light it, and it's just gonna kind of ground it a little bit more, tie more of her natural color in. That way there's not a bunch of color in between that are different. Great. And this piece, I'm taking a bigger section, and on the top, I'm gonna be using 6.0 and 7.1 with 6 volume. That's what I'm putting right here. And you can really customize it, like, depending on where you're at on the head and how you want the hair to lay. Like, I might drag this down further, but in this case, I want her to have some lightness. And then now I'm using the bottom color with a different colored brush, so I know which one's which. And I'm using 8.0 plus 955. And that's the one that has the gold in it. And it's with 6 volume, 1:1. My goal is by the time I get to the top, I want to be doing more highlights probably. There's a lot of patches, so I'm just sort of getting these grounded so that the highlights lay on top of them nicely. It's sort of like makeup. When you're highlighting, contouring, I'm doing a lot of contouring in her hair right now. The most important thing about dark Suede Blonde is the ratio of the light to dark, and that's where low lights come into play. Just really making sure there's a balance. It's like that in-between color that's not too dark, not too light, but also not muddy or mousy. And that's why it's important to have a few highlights and lots of lowlights. If I was working on a different client and her texture was maybe a little bit more damaged or finer, I might actually change the ratio a little bit. I might use a little bit more gold and less neutral and maybe no ash at all, and maybe even sometimes a shade lighter. And if her hair was coarser, maybe a little bit more resistant to color, I might even go a half a shade darker. I personally think Vibrance is the highest quality demi-permanent hair color you're gonna find. To me, the color payoff, the shade range, everything, it's so luxe. I love it. So now we're getting into highlight land. Yeah, so now I'm kind of headed towards the crown, and I'm sort of avoiding things that I don't want to come in contact with, and then I'm going to low light behind it. So you can see the section that I'm going to highlight, pulling that forward, and then I'm taking the hair that's underneath, and then I'm picking out the pieces that I want to go away. So once I pick them out, then I'll take the Vibrance, darker color on the top, and the lighter color on the bottom. And as I work up the head, I do sort of slowly go higher and higher. Like, I don't like to bring it down as far, but every client's different. Some clients have a lot of layers and you can't pull it down as far. Some don't, and you can. I feel like my technique is very like customizable. One of the biggest mistakes I see that people are doing when they're trying to recreate dark Suede Blonde is using permanent hair color to low light. So that's a big no for me. You should be using demi-permanent because it's gentler on the hair and you're not going to get unwanted warmth And if you do change your hair color in the future, it's going to be easier to highlight your hair. People have to remember when you put permanent hair color, it is permanent, so it's harder to get out of the hair. If you were painting in school, in art class, and you had watercolor, you had acrylic, you had oil, you had all these different things, right, to use for your project. To me, Vibrance is kind of a good combination of acrylic and watercolor. You get the coverage you want, you get all those things you get from the acrylic, but then you also get the freestyle, fluidity, those aspects from the watercolor. Okay, so if you do want more of a watercolor or a translucent vibe, then use clear in your formula or the 9.5 series. Because Vibrance is alkaline demi, there are a lot of things that you can do that you maybe couldn't do with acid demi. So one of my biggest pet peeves is damaged hair, and I'm a really big stickler on the health and the shine, and that's why I really love the Vario Super Blonde Plus lightener, and my clients have been really raving about their highlights. So now that I finished the back section, I'm gonna start moving on to the front around her hairline. Now we're highlighting the front, the hairline, or face frame. Whatever you want to call it. And I am going closer together with the highlights in the front because naturally that's where there would be more lightness. I like to go as close as I can without it touching. So the way I avoid bleeds are using a lightener that's a little thicker in consistency and not going too close to the top. So I'll start kind of like a little off the roots, and then I might like feather up a little bit. So I'm going back in between for what I left out for the low light. I like to go in between because it's easier to do it that way than go in directly. You can see there's like a little piece that's a layer, keeping that out. You can see this block of color here. See, it's dark, her natural, and then it's all blonde, and there's like a little strip of dark. So I want everything to look seamless, so that's why I'm going in and trying to kind of swipe away that patch. Basically what I'm doing with the lowlights is tying in her natural color throughout the rest of her hair. So I did the diagonal in the front, and now I'm going horizontal because if you see the hair, gravity's taking it horizontal. So I instead of going in this way, going against the hair, it's going this way. The hair's growing this way in the front. It's growing this way here. I'm kind of just following nature. It definitely gives more of a natural effect. If I was to go in against the way her hair grew, it would give more of a dramatic effect. This is just the way I prefer to do it. And it's also kind of easier to see because you're seeing it in panels the way the hair is falling. I trust Vibrance so much because every time I use it, my clients are obsessed. They love it. They rave about their hair, and it's always a 10 out of 10. Yeah, so right now I'm using the gold formula, which is the 80 plus 955. And that's why I'm bringing it through the blonde ends, because I know that it's not going to turn some crazy color or grab dark. That's also why I use a lighter formula, because the ends are more porous, so they do grab darker. Even though I'm using a lighter color, level 8, 9 on the ends, sometimes it actually doesn't look like an 8 or a 9. It looks more like a 7 or more like a strong 8. But this is just the way I like to do it. Yeah, it really helps me avoid that muddy or inky finish. I think the #1 reason why my clients trust me is because I genuinely care. Not only because I use the best hair color products in the world, I also, know so much about their personal life, and they know so much about mine. It's truly, a genuine relationship and a bond I have with my clients. Okay, so I just asked my client Lee, where do you part your hair? That's one of the most important things that I ask when I'm doing my client's color is to know where their hair falls. If her part was here, I would want to make sure I'm highlighting more in this area, but because she parts in the middle, I know I can actually add more depth here. When I'm on the part, I'm going to want to use more highlights, but because I'm not on the part, I'm going to be using more lowlights. So it's really important, you have to check your foils. We just pulled the nape of her neck, and that is because you don't want the hair to overprocess. So it's key to always have a wet towel and wipe the section clean of bleach when it's ready. Okay, so now we're gonna move to the hairline. So as you can see, her hairline is pretty even, so it's gonna be a good one to highlight. You can see these hairs right here. I'm gonna start here with a fine section and just follow around her hairline.
What you're putting on.
Okay, so I'm using Vario Blonde Super Plus with 20, and I'm using this little baby brush that Schwarzkopf has, and it's gonna be perfect for getting in these hairs, and it gives you control. I never like using a big brush in the front. It gets messy. No one wants a mess. Okay, and then I'm going in another one. I'm just following the same exact line that I created and following that again. And I'm going in with finer highlights for her face frame. I'm using finer highlights for her face frame. And I'm going pretty close together. And I'm not using big pieces because I don't want that like huge thick piece in the front. I want it to be light, but I don't want that big chunk. And then I'm doing a little bit of a low light on top. And then the thing with the front hairs is you want to go shorter. So this is the 6.0 and the 7.1. I'm not bringing it down as far because I don't really want a ton of low light in the front, but I'm just doing a little tiny bit. And this is the 955 that's now meeting the blonde. The reason why I love using this lightener is because on the hairline, it's really delicate, and I just know that the Vario Blonde Super Plus won't break the hairline. You'll see when I'm working, I like to address every piece of hair differently, even though we're going with the same outcome. Like this piece in the front is shorter, so I'm not bringing the color down as far. This piece is longer. So everything's just customized to the client. I recommend Vibrance to every hair colorist because the payoff is amazing and it never fails me. Yeah, so everyone in the salon, I started using it, and a lot of the stylists at the salon were asking me questions on how to use it, and I just love that I see more and more people using Vibrance. All I'm gonna say is, if you haven't used Vibrance, it's your loss. When you're highlighting on the part, you just wanna make sure that you're putting the same amount on each side. I feel like that's something that can potentially go wrong. If you're doing a tighter weave on the left side of the part, make sure you're using a tighter weave on the right side. And also just making sure you have the client's part right. That's the most important. If the client has a side part, you wanna highlight it on the side. Don't highlight it in the middle. So we just checked the back and it's ready to rinse. I lifted her to a nice gold, and we'll rinse the back out, and then we're gonna keep working on her right side. Okay, so the back was processed, so we rinsed that, and now we're moving on to her right side, and we're gonna do exactly the same thing on this side that we did on her left side. I recommend Vibrance to every colorist because it's so versatile and the color payoff is amazing, and it's always at my station. Now that we're at the last section, it's really important to make sure that you're matching each part. So I'm on the right side of her part, and then the left side of her part has to be the same texture weave. So it's pretty tight. There's a lot of hairs that I've weaved, and that is exactly what I did on the left side. Okay, so now that we're finished highlighting, we're gonna keep checking her, and as she processes, we're gonna rinse, and when we're all finished rinsing, we're gonna come back and show you guys the next steps. I love when I'm doing low lights or I'm doing Vibrance all over, I love using the gel developer because it's a little bit more fluid and I can get it through the hair easier. But if I'm doing a base color or something on the roots, I'll use the cream. And in Lee's situation, we're going darker. We don't want a ton of warmth, so I'm gonna use 6 volume. Okay, so now that she's getting rinsed, I'm gonna start prepping her Vibrance for the roots. And on the front hairline, I'm gonna use 9-1 plus 9-0. And on the roots, I'm gonna use 7-1 plus 8-0, both with 6 volume. So this is the front part, and then I'm also gonna use a little bit of ash and a little bit of neutral for the root color. So I'm gonna mix that up. I'm gonna use 30 grams of the 7-1 and 30 grams of the 8-0. So typically on blondes, I always use a different hairline color than the roots, and that's because I want it to look natural. And if the sun was lightening the hair, the hairline would be lighter because those hairs are finer. And they also grab color a little bit differently. Okay, so I'm gonna use the gel again on her root color. I'm gonna start with the roots. So it's gonna be 60 cc's or grams because I did 30 of 7-1 and 30 of 8-0. So then 60 of the 6 volume. So I love to use 6 volume because I don't wanna lift the base or see any warmth. In her case, I'm gonna use the hairline last. So I'm not gonna mix that part up yet until I get done with the root color. So the last 7 minutes, I apply the hairline color to the front, and you'll see when I section it out, I'll leave that out for the last. Okay, so now with Lee, we're gonna be doing her root color that's gonna soften the highlights, and she's all rinsed out. We're gonna do this on damp hair because it leaves a softer effect on the hair when we do it damp. And I'm gonna leave the hairline out for the end so that stays bright, and you'll kind of see when the hair moves, kind of like where it's gonna go, like the hairline here, I'll leave this out. And it's really preference. Like if Lee told me I wanna have a really big piece in the front, I leave a thicker section. In this case, we're trying to recreate the look, so I'm gonna stick with something a little bit thinner in this case. And you can see how I'm following where her hairline would go. And if you want to look this way a little bit, you can see here. And then once I have this figured out, then I'll start applying the root color. And you can see they look pretty even. So you can see how they're pretty even on both sides. Now I'm going to go in and kind of outline behind it, and that's my guide for the rest of her hair. So I'll take that and go around. Now everyone's hairline is different. Someone might have a really like jagged hairline and you would go around it that way. In her case, she has the most perfect hairline. So we're gonna just go with it. It's easy. Okay, also now that the outline's created, if you tilt your head down, now I can decide how far out I'm gonna bring the color. On Sydney's hair, I really wanted it to look soft, so I dragged it down pretty far. So this is about, I'd say like 2 inches down. And then when I get to the back, I'll show you guys. To the back, I'm gonna go even further. So I might do like 3 inches because you want it to have kind of a gradient. You don't want it to look perfect all the way around. And this is how it looks organic and natural. So once this is done, I'm just gonna work my way through. Okay, so on the roots, I'm using 7-1 plus 8-0 with 6 volume gel developer. This is the most important thing I do on most of my clients that really ties the highlights in with the look that we're doing. So this is how you really customize a traditional highlight or a balayage or anything like that. We could go darker, we could go lighter, we could go warm, cool. This is where it gets to be really fun and creative. Even though it is natural, you still can have fun with it. If she wanted to go lighter with this, we could do a couple different things. We could use a lighter level, or we could just leave it on for 10 minutes instead of 20. And if she wanted to go darker, I'd maybe add a little bit more of the 7 and take out a little bit of the 8. So that way it kind of makes it darker. And maybe put the hairline on first. There's a couple different ways to do this, but this is when science becomes art. I think if you're trying Vibrance for the first time, always go a little lighter at first, just so you can get the hang of it. So if you're wanting to use a 7, maybe use a little bit of 8. If you're wanting to use an 8, use 9. That way you're not going too dark. I also think this is the perfect way to try Vibrance for the first time. If you've never tried it, try it on a root gloss. Try it on a low light. You don't have to put it on the entire head of hair to get comfortable using it. I think that's the best way, and that's honestly the way I started. I just started using it with low lights on my clients and incorporating that. And then once I really got comfortable, then I started putting it all over and mixing and filling and really having fun with it. So just kind of get your feet wet. For Sydney, we made her lighter before awards, and I think that's kind of the next iteration of dark suede blonde. You can like make it lighter, and for me, it's having this like overall tonal, pretty natural color. And yeah, so for me, dark suede blonde feels so luxe because it's tonal. So if you think of like a suede purse or a suede jacket, yeah, it's brown or yeah, it's beige or tan, but it has that like multi-dimensional feel to it. It's not super stripy or patterned. It's just luxe and pretty and shiny, and that's why I love dark suede blonde. Okay, another tip that I like to do is use a treatment of your choice on the ends while the roots are processing. It also protects the ends from picking up any of the color on the roots. Okay, so a lot of these things might seem silly, but for me, my clients really appreciate the attention to detail, and all the small things really add up. So we're now in the last 7 minutes, so I'm gonna start applying the hairline, and you can see I'm blending down so there's no harsh line of demarcation. And on this side, I'm gonna show you guys, I take this hair and I'm kind of feathering the color down. I'm not pressing it like so perfectly, I'm just kind of brushing. That way there's a seamless effect. So on the hairline, I'm using 9.0 plus 9.1 in Vibrance with 6 volume. And this is gonna sit on for 7 minutes. My favorite Demi-Permanent line is Vibrance, and the reason why is because it's a one and done. I'm not layering over and over and over. With Vibrance, it's one shot and it's perfect. So the actual color density, it's so rich that it doesn't leave spots or marbling. It's like completely even for me every time. Everyone's born with their natural skin tone, so you have to also play into that when you're looking at someone and you're deciding on a hair color to choose. If you're naturally a redhead, just because dark suede blonde is popular doesn't mean you have to be dark suede blonde also, or your client has to have that color. Because sometimes what looks good on one person, it goes well with their skin tone, might not look good on someone else. So that's when you're in control of like picking and advising your client to do the right thing. Oh my God, what do you think?
Jacob, I'm obsessed. This is exactly what I wanted.
How do you feel?
I feel on top of the world. I don't even have full words to describe how perfect this hair is.
Oh my God, I love it. You look so pretty.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I love it. I think the low lights turn out so pretty. Really,
this is perfect for spring. Like, it feels like you really like just took that dark suede look to next level. Like, this is, again, I cannot put this into words. I feel like a new person.
Here's a little reminder on what we just did to recreate Sydney Sweeney's dark suede blonde. I low lighted with 7.1 plus 6.0 on the top and 8.0 plus 9.55 on the ends, both with 6 volume. And then in between, I highlighted with Suede Blonde Super Plus and 20 volume. So after I rinse the highlights and lowlights, I then use Vibrance on her hair damp. I use 7.1 plus 8.0 on the top with 6 volume and 9.0 plus 9.1 on the hairline with 6 volume for the last 7 minutes, but it sat for 20 minutes total. Okay, so I also want to talk about how the lowlights just added the most perfect shine and dimension to her hair. That's the most important part about Vibrance, is that it really adds this beautiful dimension. Hi, Sydney. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to hear everyone's thoughts, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I love it. I really do think it looks so good on you.
I'm so obsessed. Like this.
It's like a different look too,
yeah,
for you, but it really does work.
Yeah, this is so great.
Love how you can see like the movement, like the different light and dark. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Where you can see like how inside there's more depth.
100%.
And the Vibrance brings that, and then on top we have a lot of the highlights from the Super Blonde Plus. I'm obsessed.
Me too. This is a shocking transformation, honestly, in the best way.